this game is worth playing.
It's good. So
Man, it's good.
So
It's so weird though because the trailers and the announcement were so bad.
You know
Right?
what?
Or rather, they were just not exciting.
Right.
There was just kind of, it existed. Whatever.
Now I just started chapter 2, so I'm obviously very early in the game. I don't know how far you guys got.
I'm in like chapter 7.
Holy cow.
I can't put it down.
I finished chapter 1 also.
Like,
Wow.
I am so into it.
Wow.
It's crazy. Yeah.
That's man, oh man, okay.
What difficulty are you playing on?
The default difficulty.
So normal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm playing on easy.
I dumbed mine down to easy myself. I started off on normal, and then I got killed early on by those bouncy balls. Those little bouncy aliens.
Yeah, those
and,
things are a bit tough the first time you get to them.
Yeah, and then I was like, man, this is like kind of the tutorial chapter, and I'm getting killed. I'm going to dumb this down for a little bit here, and by a little bit, I mean until I finish the game. But
Yeah.
but yeah,
I would say that's probably if I have any, I don't even want to call it complaint, but as far as the progression goes,
yeah,
those early battles are tough because you're still sort of learning the battle system,
right?
And those gelatinous cubes, which I love that's the enemies in the game are hilarious, I think, but yeah, those gelatinous cubes are just like, these are way too difficult.
Well, there's a ton of them, and they swarm you, and yeah, but yeah. I'm having a blast with it. I guess we want to talk about at least the first chapter. Spoilers for it. And I heartily recommend if you have not been privy to some of these details. There's some actually cool, fun stuff that I'm glad was not spoiled. So
yeah, I'm almost really glad as I'm playing it. Really glad that it wasn't really on my radar because I wrote it off so early, like clearly like the rest of you did. I wrote it off so early on. I think it's a mixture of. Wow, Phil left. It's a mixture of Avengers as well. I think what the Avengers did this game no favors. I realize they're two different games, but because it's sort of still it's skirting the edge of that weird off-brand MCU look, which doesn't bother me now that I'm playing it. But it was that, and I really hated the way the Avengers looked, and I bounced off the Avengers after a few hours. I did not like that game. I didn't want to play it the way they wanted me to play it, basically. And so I was pretty much ignoring Guardians. I mean, all I knew about it was, I think, the 2 trailers and the various shows over the past year or so. That's it.
They've actually been doing a lot of marketing for this in the run-up. Like the official PlayStation and Xbox channels, I think, have done like a bunch of videos on it. But yeah, you're right. Nobody was paying attention to this game. Like Digital Foundry did not do a video on this game. Like I think everybody expected it to just be a flop.
Yeah, just land like with a wet thud, and that would be the end of it.
And it could be that Square Enix might have thought that as well. I wonder what the price will be on Black Friday, like if this game is going to drop quickly. But the funny thing is, it's pretty good.
it is.
I'd say it's really good. The only thing I don't like about it is Peter Quill's model and face.
Yeah, he
That's the only thing I don't like.
He
about
does
it.
look insufferable, doesn't he?
It's funny because they actually make a joke about the haircut. Early on, I think in the second chapter.
It's at the beginning of the second chapter.
It's like, aren't you a little young to be Novacor? And the little girl looks up and says, "Aren't you a little old for that haircut?"
Yeah.
But speaking of which, the writing in this game is really good.
It is. This is the thing that's really getting me about this game is the characters are all fantastically written. It does have the vibe of the movies. With the constant banter back and forth between all these
pot shots at each other and things like that.
Yeah, and they're all very strong characters. And they have their very distinct personalities and they bounce off each other a lot. But holy crap, the amount of dialogue that they wrote for this game, it is to the point where the characters are just constantly chattering with each other as you're going around.
Works.
Oh, and it works great.
And it works.
Really works.
And outside of battle, you don't hear they're not talking about the same things over and over again. And that's the interesting thing, is that it's very hard to be funny in video games.
Yeah.
And also to be this constant with dialogue all the time.
To the point where there have been a couple occasions where it's like, I kind of don't want to advance because there are, because the characters are not always talking, because you play as Peter and the other Guardians are all doing stuff around you, and they're not just chatting with you. They're talking to each other. So it's like, oh, that room looks like there's going to be something important happen in that room.
So I'm not going in there yet.
I'm going to hold off because Drax and Gamora are having a conversation that I don't want to interrupt.
Or there's a side path here. I think I'm going to take the side path because maybe there will be some really interesting dialogue.
I even really like that because, like as you were saying, you play as Peter, and this is a very much a sort of a standard. I shouldn't say standard because it's all team based, but standard, over the shoulder, third person shooter, and you're walking through these big levels. So there's a lot of paths that shoot off from the main path, so you can find loot. Basically, I mean, it's in the form of materials that you can craft things with, but
or different outfits
or different outfits. But that's something else that I really love about this is that it's not overdone. There's two different types of materials, and then you can find little bits and pieces that unlock sort of interesting dialogue. But otherwise, you're not collecting a million different things. And the upgrade tree is very straightforward, which I love. But like even then, if you go off the beaten path, then the other Guardians will sit there and basically rag on Peter over the radio. About how he can't stay focused or he's off doing his own thing. It's just
why are you going over there? That's a dead end. There's nothing. There's nothing right there.
The little girl in the Nova Corps.
Good job. You just walked into a dead end. What were you trying to get away from me? That kind of thing.
So good.
Yeah. It's really, really clever and really fun to listen to. So I'm having a blast with it.
And talk about a great first impression. Oh my God. So again, we're into spoilers here, and even though this is the very beginning of the game, if you haven't seen or know anything about this, you don't want it spoiled.
Right.
But very early on, I think it's the way the game starts, right? Or is it the opening scene? It is the opening scene. You're in Peter's bedroom on his 13th birthday.
It's a flashback, obviously.
It's a flashback, and he's clearly listening to a band called Star-Lord. But it really,
which apparently they have released an album.
They've got an
streaming
album services in the game.
They have, you can get this album on streaming services.
That's pretty cool. But it's very, and it's of course, it's done and actually this is another thing that I really like about it, because the movies, all the music in the movies, obviously the music is a huge part of Peter Quill's character. And in the movies, it was all about the music his mother listened to and left him on mixtapes, which was all 70s tunes for the most part, which was great. In this one, the music, and I don't know if this is more real to the comics or what, but the music is all 80s music.
Right.
Yeah. And he's sort of a rocker kid in the 80s. He's got the mullet and he's got the denim jacket and all that sort of thing. But anyway, so that's what it establishes. His mom comes in and talks to him a little bit. So you learn that it's his 13th birthday. And then you get up and you can look around his room and oh my God.
Well, before you even get into that, I was, because it starts off first person. Where you are sitting on the bed and you have the Walkman and you have the headphones on and you're hearing the Star-Lord album, and when it begins you're sitting there and you're holding the
liner notes
and it has all the lyrics for the songs. And you can flip them back and forth and just read the lyrics, and if you want you can sit there and listen to a full I think it's 10 songs or so. You can just sit there and listen to the whole album. You can fast forward and rewind the Walkman with like the shoulder buttons or something, but you can just literally just sit there and chill out and listen to this metal album, and then your mom comes in and has a chat with you. And there was a surprising cameo. She steps on one of his toys.
It's Chewbacca.
And she picks it up and she throws it to you and you catch it, and it's the old Kenner Chewbacca figure. And it's, just like they scanned one of the old Kenner figures, and it was all like accurately, like the paint was all kind of scraped off it and stuff like that. It'd clearly been played with. But yeah, then you get up and you're walking around the room, and yeah, like to what you were saying, Greg,
but I mean, actually backing up even that, it really hit me just sitting on the bed and listening. It really sort of stirred a lot of nostalgia, because this isn't something that you normally would do anymore, but it was very much an experience of the 80s. If you were into music at all, you get a new tape, and it wasn't weird to be sitting there and listening to it in your Walkman because you didn't want to disturb your parents or anything like that.
Right.
Or were told not to disturb your parents. And sitting there looking at the liner notes. Absolutely. That's
totally.
Absolutely a thing you would do, and learning the lyrics. But yeah, you get up and move around the room, and like I mentioned in our Slack channel while I was doing it, it's like I kind of don't want to leave. Because there's so much to look at in the room, and there's so many not only references but actual very realistic. The room looks very realistic for an 80s basement room, first of all. But things like there's a ColecoVision on the floor in one corner, surrounded by a bunch of games, which I think most of which are actually real games. ColecoVision games.
Saw Frenzy in there, and
Gateway to Apshai. And Nova Blast, I think. It had an iMagic logo on it. I don't know if it's real or not.
Yeah.
There's a Samantha Fox poster on the wall.
Oh, was there really?
Is there really?
There's an actual Samantha Fox poster.
I didn't notice
on the wall.
that.
I missed that.
But then also there's a Tron poster.
Right.
But then also you had like sort of fun references. Like there was a poster with these little furry creatures called Furthings, which is clearly Gremlins.
Yeah.
There was
it's
a
funny
Nuke
too.
Game poster, which was War Games, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's funny the mix of, like, I mean, mostly Disney owned properties that they have the actual, like, objects of, and then the stuff that they don't have the rights to. So there's like fake Masters of the Universe stuff scattered around the floor, and
it was done so well, though.
Yeah,
so
really
so
done
well.
And I also thought a really cool Easter egg in there was on his. If you look on his bookshelf, there's a book there called Death Trap Dungeon by Ian Livingstone.
Yeah.
If you remember who Ian Livingstone, he was an author. He is an author. I don't think he's still alive. He's an author who I don't know if he did Choose Your Own Adventures, but he did a bunch of books that I remember reading when I was a kid. But he was president and CEO of IDOS for quite a while.
Oh, really?
So when I saw that, I was like, nice. That's a nice little reference there too. But even further into the house, and I don't think you guys have, there's one thing I really wanted to mention, but I don't think either of you guys have seen the second flashback yet.
No.
Not yet.
So I won't mention the really cool thing that you're both going to love. But even little things like you get out into his basement, and in one corner, there's like a couple of those old lawn or beach chairs set up, and they're like those old, you guys will recognize them the second you see them. They're the old metal frame with the plastic, almost like tube.
Right,
that you'd sit in and they would separate, and
those hard plastic tubes.
Yes, so there's like some of those, and then at one point you go up into the upstairs bathroom, and there's one of those. To me, anyway, around here, everybody's mom had one of these. It's like one of the hanging planters made of yarn that has like the little tassels hanging off the bottom, and there's beads on the side.
It's called macrame.
Macrame, thank you.
Yeah. And we absolutely had a gigantic macrame plant hanger in our kitchen when I was a kid.
Yes, well, there you go, right?
Yeah.
And so there's one of those. And actually, somebody in the chat, Bogart2112, just said Ian Livingstone wrote a bunch of the fighting fantasy books. That's what they were, which I think they were the little role-playing books. Like you could fight things in them. You used dice with them and everything like that. It was really neat.
Okay.
Anyway, I just wanted to get all that out because doing those, the flashbacks aren't the only good thing about the game, obviously, but man, they did a fantastic job. And I really, really, really like that they focused on the 80s because not only because I love the 80s, and by the way, there's a ton of licensed 80s music in this game too.
Michael Ian Black over here, my goodness.
But it also does a good job of sort of separating the experience from the movie. Yeah. Because the movie focused so much on the 70s music.
Right.
But it's kind of, it further separates it, even though it's the same property, which I think was a great idea.
Yeah. Well, it also, I mean, the movie, other than the opening scene of the first movie, didn't really focus on Quill on Earth. You know, so
no,
you,
but I'm just saying the music in general, and I'm sort of moving because just like in the movies, the '80s music that they've got licensed, you're hearing it all the time in the game. Yeah, and you did in the movies as well, but
even on the ship, there's a jukebox on the ship, and you can just call up any of the licensed music they have. And
I don't know if you noticed or not, too. Have you used the huddle command yet in battle?
Yes,
so
I did.
When you come out of a huddle, it's playing some music from his Walkman as well.
Yes.
So like I was doing a boss fight to Rick Astley at one point, and I was like, "This is the greatest game in the world." So
because there's an animation where he pulls out the Walkman,
holds up the Walkman,
and hits.
Yeah. Well, we should probably explain what that is.
Yeah.
So, like as we were saying, the first level is kind of a tutorial stage. The first chapter teaching you, all the mechanics of fighting and stuff like that. And during the first part of that chapter, the characters are separated. You go down. You're on a is it like a big like junkyard, like a space junkyard or something, right?
You're just surrounded by pink goo.
Yeah, it's just like a big planet of junk that's all kind of tentatively held together by some goo, and you're there trying to find a monster that,
or as Peter Quill would say, a monster.
Yeah.
By the way, the whole game is crawling with Canadian voice actors.
There you go.
And boy, is it obvious that they're Ontarian Canadian voice actors. Wow.
So it's you and Rocket and Groot are down on the surface, and Drax and Gamora are on the ship flying around. And I was amused because they give themselves call names. So Drax and Gamora are Team Green, and then Rocket is apparently leading your team. So you're on Team Rocket, which I thought that was cute, just because Team Rocket blasting off. But so you're down on the surface. Well, not really surface, but you're down on this junk planet, learning how to.
No, it's not nowhere in the chat. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not. It's not nowhere. I forget what it's called, but yeah. But yeah, so you learn how to, because you can give commands to the other Guardians. So you can have Groot, entangle enemies to hold them still while you attack. You can have Rocket lob grenades. Yeah. But then later on through the level, Drax and Gamora show up as well. So you have all of them fighting alongside you, and you can give them commands as well. And then there's a meter that fills up as you battle, and I forget exactly what they call it, but
it's the huddle.
Is it just the huddle meter?
It's called the huddle, yep.
Yeah, so when that reaches its max, you can activate a huddle where you basically call your team together, and you basically Quill gives an inspirational speech, and you get to kind of select dialogue, so you can kind of choose what you want, like. So the Guardians will be talking. They're like, "Oh man, I don't think we can win this battle. Oh yeah, we're having a really tough time out there." And then you select the proper responses to kind of play off their insecurities about the battle. And if you select the correct responses, they'll get kind of re-energized and pull off a stronger kind of counterattacks to fight the enemies.
What I really like about that is, this goes along with actually you're constantly being asked to make dialogue choices in this game. Yeah. But this is a good example of, I think, that they've handled it so well, is that in the huddle, they're not always down. Sometimes they're up. Sometimes they're very excited as well. There was a battle I was in recently where I called a huddle, and it was against a bunch of enemies we'd already beaten a group of them earlier, and they were just there, like, we're kicking their asses, and like they've got nothing for us. They're so easy to beat. And then you get two dialogue choices, and one is to agree with them or to say, like, don't get overconfident, But the nice thing is that if you pick the right dialogue choice, everybody gets buffed. Yeah. Even if you pick the wrong one, anyone who was previously killed in the battle is back to life now. and I think everyone's healed. So even if
and Peter is buffed,
and
only
Peter's buffed. So like even if you pick the wrong dialogue choice, you're not penalized for it. You just don't get as good a bonus if you get it wrong. Which I think
is good.
It's fantastic.
Of course it
and
makes you look forward to the huddle instead of dreading failing it, right?
And it kind of goes in line with the just the interaction between all the characters anyway, because in between battles when you're traversing, a lot of times, like Phil said, they're constantly chattering. But the chatter will oftentimes leads into bickering. Right?
Yeah.
It's like having 4 kids with you. And and then like an option will appear at the bottom of the screen for you to press a button and Peter to say something, either usually to side with one person or another, or to like say, refocus the team or tease the team or sometime make no comment. And it feels very natural.
Oh yeah.
Well, because that's optional too. You don't have to do it,
right? And
if you don't, they keep bantering,
right?
There's
and that's
no,
what I mean.
Fail state.
It always exactly. There's no fail state, and it feels like it's definitely having an effect on what's happening. But I have a feeling that if you were to go back and play through again and make different choices, it wouldn't be that big an effect. But it's done well enough that it still feels like you've had an effect on the outcome here, right?
Yeah,
and I really dig that a lot too.
Yeah,
actually.
Same.
I know Rocket was furious with me because I let Drax throw him across the chasm at one point to extend a bridge. So then when we got to the second bridge like that in the level, it wasn't an option to throw him across.
Oh, really?
So angry about the first.
That's pretty good.
We had to find another way around.
That's good.
Oh man.
So
yeah, it's a fun game. I'm really having a blast with it. So
the combat is great too, and that was the thing I was the most worried about. Because you're controlling 5 characters while you're playing. You're only controlling Peter directly, but you're trying to direct the other 4. But the combat menu is really easy to use, and it's really obvious what basically Groot and Rocket are crowd control.
Yeah.
And Drax and Gamora are muscle.
Yeah.
And once you learn that, like you were talking about the cubes, and the other thing is that Peter unlocks different abilities too, as well as different elemental effects. And once you get some more of those, like the cubes you were talking about, when you get the ice elemental effect, those cubes become a lot easier.
Oh, okay.
Because you can freeze them and then shatter them.
Gotcha.
Right? So once you learn sort of the effects that your character's abilities have on different types of enemies, it really combat really becomes a lot of fun. And I've heard people complain that on the easiest setting, it's not as effective. You don't get to use it as much. You don't have to use it as much, is kind of the argument for playing at a higher difficulty. Personally, I'm finding on the default setting that I'm using them and having a satisfying experience using them a lot. But if you're playing on easy and you're not taking advantage of them, I highly recommend it because it really changes the way combat feels, like even after a couple hours into the game.
Nice. But yeah, very pleasantly surprised by Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's